Welcome to the Bravehearted Summit. I'm your host, Paola, and today I am so excited to introduce to you a special guest. His name is PJ Dixon. PJ is a lifelong motivational speaker and an international life, love, and relationship coach. He is affectionately known as the Love Guru. And after spending any time with him, you'll understand why. He lives with his life with a single mission: love deeply and teach others to do the same. He's a former wheelchair athlete, international traveler, amateur watercolorist, founder of 2 nonprofit organizations and 4 disabled sports programs, a published author, 10th degree black belt, martial arts and women's self-defense instructor, and a meditation teacher. I'm so excited to introduce to you PJ. PJ, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for letting me be here. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. And it's so crazy to hear my own bio, because I'm just like, I want to get smaller and smaller and smaller, because I'm like, oh, it just really, no. I'm so worried about ego in my life, ever since I learned about Buddhism when I was, oh gosh, I don't know, 18 or 19 years old, and started to understand ego. I'm always like, oh, I might do a lot of stuff, but I don't want anybody to think that that ego is there. So it's funny, my response when I hear my own bio.
I love that. But I feel too that, sharing your bio also shows people how you persevered in your own life. I mean, like what I mentioned earlier, you are disabled, but, you were also not expected to live past the age of 7. So I think it's important to highlight those things, because we all have challenges in our life, and some early on and some right now, and that's just a part of life. So honor that. I honor that about you. So thank you.
And I do too. I've lived 41 years longer than I was supposed to. So I would say one of 2 things. Either I've got something good to do, which I hope is the case, or God's pissed and I have to work off my karma, which is really probably.
I love that. God. Yeah, I hear you on that one. Well, my first question that I love to start off with everybody that is a part of this event, this project, is what does leading with your vulnerability in your love life mean to you, and how has that impacted the way you coach and teach your clients?
I love this question because first and foremost, I love love. And when we lead with vulnerability, we lead with an openness and receptivity. And vulnerability, we're never more strong than when we're vulnerable. Because when we're vulnerable, all the ego washes away and there's just this openness. And when there's just this openness, there's this raw, authentic nature for who you really are. And in this rawness, it's this rawness that allows another person to actually see you and get to know you for who you really truly are. So there's so many times when nowadays you're seeing a lot of speakers or a lot of coaches just come authentically in front of their own tribe, their own clients, their own following, and they say, hey, look, I made a mistake. Look, this is where I am. Hey, this is what I'm struggling with. And people fall in love with them. Why? Because they're being vulnerable, and they're not saying, oh, I'm this perfect and I do this and this is how good I am at this and I never have any problems and I wake up on the right side of the bed every day. And if they did, nobody would be able to relate to them, because we're just human beings. We're just trying to figure it out together. And so when we come with that space of vulnerability, from that space of vulnerability within our love life, whether it's romantic or familial or filial, meaning friendships, when we come from that place, then people feel like we're real and they can relate to us, and it allows for a connection. And so when I do that with my clients, what happens is that they feel like there's a level of safety and comfort, and they don't have to put on any air or pretend to be something that they're not. They can just come openly and cleanly. Now, one really important note about that is that I'm not like coming every time with my clients and being like, oh, I'm in so much struggle, I'm suffering, because I'm not really. Like, my life is really good. But on occasion, I need to share with them, hey, you know what, I go through that on occasion too, and this is what I do to get through it. Because as the coach, it's also really important that I've already gone through a lot of my stuff so that I can share how I got through it, but also so that they can go, okay, you're the rock right now. And when I need to break down, I know that you're going to be solid and be there for me. And as a man, and this is where I'm not intending to be sexist at all, but recognize that masculine and feminine are beautiful complements of each other. And as a man, I want to hold that space for any one of my clients. And most of my clients are women. So I want them to feel safe in my presence. So sometimes I need to open up and be soft enough with where I'm coming from so that they can connect with me and feel comfortable and safe. And sometimes I need to make sure that I'm holding that space so they can break down and let out what's in them. So sometimes they don't need me or want me to be vulnerable. So it's just a matter of being able to read where I am in that particular relationship in the moment.
That's very well put, and it's so true that we both have masculine and feminine energies, and of course, naturally, you're going to be more in your masculine for most men, and I'm going to be more in my feminine for most women. But nowadays, women are more in their masculine, and sometimes it's really, really difficult for some women to be in their feminine because they have ideas of what femininity means to them and being in their feminine means to them because of past experiences.
Well, there's also this idea that men are becoming a little softer also. And that's not always a bad thing. Like, there's some really beautiful parts about men becoming a little bit softer, because when a man becomes a little bit softer, he becomes a little bit more accessible to his lady, right? She feels a little safer to be able to come into his presence. And she gets a little bit more of his vulnerability. She gets a little bit more of his heart. She gets that opportunity to hold him and keep him and nurture him and love him up a little bit. That's such a beautiful addition to the masculinity of, 40 or 50 years ago, where men didn't cry and they didn't show their weakness. And now the men that are coming, in their 20s and 30s and maybe even 40s, they're open to their lovely brides. They're open to their wives, their partners, their girlfriends, and they share a little bit more of who they are. And unfortunately, we've seen women also start to pick up some of the masculine. And that's because more often than not, because they either have to provide for themselves, or the men that aren't good that are out there that are players and predators are making them feel like they have to protect themselves. And so when a good man and a good woman come together, I love this idea of when a man walks up behind his lady and he hugs her from behind. And he doesn't walk up like and scare. He's not like da-dum, 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 boo, ah. He doesn't scare her, right? He just walks up behind her and embraces his lady from behind. Because when you do that with a woman will go, and she'll melt back into her feminine. Because when he embraces her from behind, he's saying, babe, I've got your back. And that allows her to embrace her feminine, her natural feminine. So she's no longer suffering and trying to do something that's rough and hard and difficult. She gets to be in her natural place of love and nurturing and receptivity. And it's the masculine and the feminine are not opposites of each other. They're beautiful, graceful, glorious, spiritual complements of each other. It's gorgeous. And I love that. I love that.
I love what you said about complements of each other. And they really do this beautiful dance between each other as well. And it's important to embrace those energies within us so that we can connect and we can be vulnerable, but it can be scary, I know. In your own experience, PJ, what challenges do people face with regards to being vulnerable in their relationships? And what have you seen that you're able to reverse engineer into like a solution for them, so that for the ones that are actually going through it right now and they can't open their hearts to being vulnerable and let alone create a relationship with someone?
Okay, so I feel like there's 2 or 3 parts to this question. So if I don't get them all, come back to one of them and ask me again, okay? So if we're talking about vulnerability for men and vulnerability for women, like how does that impact them? I'm gonna back up for just a minute so you can see me, okay? Men, can you still hear me okay from back here?
Yes.
Okay, good. So men, right, when they enter a relationship, they don't want to be vulnerable, right? And I'm a little small guy. I'm backing up so you can see, like, I'm a tiny little dude. I'm 4 feet tall in my wheelchair, 5'2", if you like stretch me out and stand me up. I'm a skinny little guy, right, with a crazy curvature at my back. But there's still this drive in me to be powerful and strong and confident and capable and not back down and not be weak. Ugh. And when we look at the word weak and we think about the idea of vulnerability within a man's head, if we look at the word vulnerability from its original Latin, it comes from vulnus. Vulnus means wound. And men really resist being wounded. We really resist being wounded because that makes us weak. And when we're weak, we can't protect the men next to us in a war. And if we're weak, we can't protect the woman that we love. And so we really, really don't like being weak. Now, I'm fortunate because I was raised largely by a single mom for a better portion of my life. And I have a really wonderful relationship with my mom. So I also have that sense of softness and that sense of vulnerability. And I'm also really a spiritual guy. And that just speaks to me. But men really struggle with that vulnerability. And so they don't share their emotions sometimes. And that makes it rough for a relationship. Now, women, on the other hand, they don't necessarily mind being vulnerable if they feel safe in the relationship. But the problem is, if the man can't be open and receptive and can't connect with his emotions, then his lady's not going to feel safe to share her emotions. And so they don't actually connect at that level. They actually wind up clashing. See, everything in the universe is energy. Everything in the universe is energy. And that means men are energy, women are energy, masculinity is energy, femininity is energy, emotions are energy, right? And there's only 3 ways that energy relates to energy. It harmonizes with. So if she's hurting, I'm embracing, right? If I'm worried and scared, she's nurturing. It harmonizes. So it brings us together in the sense of love and unity. And my definition of love is the willing exchange of oneself for oneness. The willing exchange of oneself for oneness. Picking up my ego and setting it on the shelf so I can move forward and be there for my lady. And when I'm in that state of love, it doesn't have to be my lady. It could be children. It could be a stranger. It could be my mom. It could be my sister. But it's this idea of when we get to this place of love, then all of a sudden there's nothing else but that love. And the 2 human beings, the 2 souls, the 2 consciousnesses really begin to merge into one. And so that's really important. Now, where was I going with that? Oh, so energies relate in 1 of 3 ways, right? They either harmonize and come together, they clash against, which is really unfortunate because that's what we often find in relationships, or they neutralize, right? Where, like in a relationship, somebody might say, oh, you look really beautiful. Oh, well, I don't really think so, but thank you.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah, why am I going to compliment you? After a while, I'm going to stop complimenting you, right? Instead of just saying, oh, thank you so much. That makes me feel like this. I'm really honored. I love this color. I just hope that it matches my eyes or whatever, It's okay to add to the compliment and tell them what you were hopeful, but definitely receive it. Because one of the things about love is ever giving. It just gives. And the thing about giving is there needs to be somebody or something on the other side to receive it. Paola, have you heard that healthy relationships are give and receive, or give and take, I mean?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, we've all heard that healthy relationships are give and take, right? But they're not. Healthy relationships aren't give and take, they're give and receive. There's a profound difference between taking and receiving. If I am hurting, if I'm struggling in a relationship, if I don't feel like I'm getting the love that I need, I'm going to start doing things and acting out and saying things in a way to take your attention, to bring it into me because I'm needing it. There's only 2 conversations that we ever have in life. Only 2 conversations. I love you and I need or want to be loved by you. There's never another conversation. And we could break it down and be like, oh, but intellectually, what if we're talking about some philosophy? Well, whatever the topic is, the message is like, I'm sharing with you because I need and want to be loved by you. And I'm sharing with you also because I want to love you and share something that I find fascinating. There's only 2 conversations we ever have. I love you, or I need and want to be loved by you.
Wow. I wish I said that. That's beautiful.
I know, I wish I'd said it too, but I didn't say it, sadly. So I steal it from my friend Greg Bowdle. He helps people rewrite their stories, and he helps people in recovery. But it's so beautiful and fits with my message of love that I've just acquiesced it or commandeered it, more likely, and making it my own because it's perfect.
Well, your mission is about helping others to love deeply. What do you mean by that?
So with love, there's layers, right? And as we peel back those layers, we become more and more and more vulnerable. But as we become vulnerable within a safe relationship, a nurturing, loving relationship, as we peel back those layers and we become more and more vulnerable, we become, as we go deeper, we start to realize there's no separation between me and my partner, between you and your partner. There's only this merging of love. So in the act of making love, it's prayerful. The two souls unite and come together. The two fleshes come together as one, right? But so do the souls, so do the minds, so do the consciousnesses. It's all about ebb and flow. It's the give and the receive, right? If I'm entering my lady, right, I'm giving pleasure to her, but she's also giving pleasure to me. So I'm giving and receiving simultaneously, and she's giving and receiving pleasure simultaneously. And that happens even with conversations. When a good conversation is had over dinner, or sitting side by side on a porch swing somewhere, or you're going for a walk and nothing's said at all, there's that exchange of love that goes from me to you and from you to me. And it's a constant flow. And so by loving deeply, I mean, you're shedding the layers of ego. You're shedding the layers of separation. You're shedding the layers of difference and distance and misunderstandings and confusion. And you're coming to a place where there's only one breath. There's only one inspiration. There's just that love. And love is the exchange of oneself, that ego-based consciousness, for oneness. It's all prayer. We're all returning from where we came from. We're all this word namaste, right? Everybody knows the word namaste now, right? Namaste means the divine in me recognizes the divine in you, which by default says that whatever is in you is also in me, because they're just extensions of the divine. The body never really dies. Humans don't die. The body just ceases function because the engine, the spirit, leaves. And so the body just lays down. If the spirit comes back, the body reanimates. You know, so many people we hear about all the time, near-death experiences, they flatlined on the table. Well, that means the body is not functioning. Why? Because the engine left. But when the engine comes back, it reanimates. So what is that that leaves? That's spirit. What is spirit? Non-physical energy. What is God? Non-physical energy. We're just expressions of the divine. So even right now, between you and I, it's just God talking to God. And not everybody's going to get it. And that's okay. But understand that even a little bit, there's a little piece of the divine talking to a little piece of the divine. And the idea is when we come together, that we literally reunite to create this wholeness, right?
I want to repeat that. It's God talking to God, right? Energy and energy. We all come from the same place. And I want to repeat that because there are people watching this right now who are going through something very difficult, you know, something very traumatic, whether it happened in their childhood or it just happened recently and they broke up with someone or they never took a chance on love, in relational love, right? Romantic love. And they'd like to open themselves up and develop more relationships in their life. But what do you say to someone who's just really deep down and it feels so real, their circumstance, it feels so real that they are loved and that love is here and present right now with them, and it really does start where? Where does it start?
It starts with yourself, right? But what I hear you saying is that they actually they have this deep down love, but they've been hurt in the past, or they're afraid to get into a relationship, or they've never been in a relationship, but they have love. And what I hear you saying, but I don't think you actually said it, was that they want to be in a relationship. Is that where you're going with that?
They do want to be in a relationship, but they're so scared to be in a relationship, and they don't even know if that's what they really want, but they want to be brave enough to do it.
So let's start with yourself. That's one of the biggest things that I teach, is learning to love yourself. And it's not hard. It's actually really, really beautiful. And I say this: seek not to love more, but instead to remove the obstacles that are separating you from love. And so when we start with loving ourselves, or anybody for that matter, but let's start with ourselves. One of the best things to do is Identify the obstacles that are separating you from loving yourself. What are you saying to yourself? What do you think about yourself? What do you think about your worth or your value? What do you think about whether or not anybody is ever going to love you? How do you treat yourself, right? And so when you actually start to look at yourself and identify the parts of you that are actually good, the parts of you that other people like and that you like, the parts of you that are your integrity, where you're like, you know what, I'm glad I'm this person. When you start to identify those things, you start to like yourself. When you start to like yourself, you can start a love affair with yourself, because you can start to like really deepen and go deeper and deeper and start to be like, you know what, I like this part about myself because of this and this and this. And that's important to me because I care about people in this way. And that's important to me because I don't want other people to suffer. So it literally is about service. It's always about what can I give? Because love is about giving. It's not about receiving. But the interesting thing about love is you can never love without first being loved. So if we think about the way love flows, right? And we close our eyes and we feel love, it might well up in your heart, it might tingle in your brain. But the point is that it comes through you before it comes from you. And so you can never be loved. You can never love without first being loved. You must become love first so that you can share it. Now, I don't believe that if you don't love yourself and you really beat yourself up and you don't really like yourself, but let's say that you're a single mom and you're just madly in love with your baby. And so many people are like, oh, you can't love anybody until you love yourself. And I say that's not 100% true. You may not be able to love at the greatest possible expanse and the greatest possible expression of love and the depths of love that I really every day strive to get to, even when I'm in my home by myself. Like today, I'm at home by myself. Nobody's here. No friends are over. Nobody's around, right? And I still make the effort to walk through my own hallway or sit in my own bedroom or my own kitchen and feel that sense of love for myself and that love for everybody else. So I say that even when you don't love yourself, even when you beat yourself up, even when you don't like yourself very much, there's a part of you at the depth. Remember that loving deeply, right? That you asked me about. There's a part of you at your depth that really, truly does want to love you, really does want to accept who you are, really does want you to rise up and express your soul's integrity, your heart's integrity at the greatest possible way that you can. And all we have to do is start to get into that place where you go, well, this is actually who I want to be. This is who I believe I am. This is what I want to be able to do for people. And when we start to get to that place, we start to blossom, because we start to say, no, this is who I am, no matter what anybody else has said to me. And when we go back to that single mom, for example, who doesn't feel very good about herself because maybe she's been in a number of abusive relationships, maybe the baby came through less than ideal circumstances, and she doesn't feel very good about herself, but she's not using, let's say she's not a drug user, she just doesn't have a very high self-esteem, she can still love that baby pretty darn purely, right? Because if we go all the way back, what we are is the expression of love. And so she's still coming from that place of, how do I say it? I normally say, give everything when you are connected to an inexhaustible source. So because that spirit that animates her is part of God, is part of that inexhaustible source, she can still open up and remove the obstacles, separate the obstacles that she has and she's feeling about herself or men or people in the world. She can set those aside and let that purity of love flow through her so that she can love her baby. Now, if she got rid of those obstacles, she just washed them away, she changed them, she transmutated them, she realized that they weren't real, she understood the value and the opportunity and the benefits that they brought, then all of a sudden she could love that baby more purely and much more easily without any stress for beating herself up. It would just be a much more pure flow. So no matter what, it always starts with loving yourself. And if that's really difficult for you, it's okay to love someone else, as long as it's a pure love that is about giving and not a love about getting. Oh, I'm going to love you because I hope I get. And if I love you and treat you this way, I'm hoping that I'm going to get that. That's not actually real love. That's conditional love. It's a form of love, but it's not the depth of love that we can get to as a human being. The depth of love that we can get to as a human being is if I'm married, for example, and I come home and find my wife running off on a beautiful romantic adventure with my best friend, although I might be heartbroken, if I truly love her and I truly love him, then I truly want them both to be happy. And if I see that there's love there and that there is respect and that there's a way that they treat each other and honor each other, I can't help but find a place within me that loves them. And that's not theory, that's real. And it's not something that you come to easily, but it's something that can actually be literally, you can do it easily if you just let go. If you just lift up the obstacles, if you just remove the obstacles, if you just remove the obstacles, destroy the obstacles, transmutate the obstacles, blow the obstacles away, whatever you need to do, anything that's in your way, that's ego related, let it go. Because that's what's standing in the way from your expression of love.
Yeah, and I also want to say that there's, to add to what you're saying, because I really think that you're pulling out a really good point for people to understand the difference between unconditional love and conditional love. Because you're right, love is in many different forms, and it doesn't always come from the most obvious source, like, a relationship, perhaps. But what I hear you saying, what I hear you talk about is also about healing, right? Because a lot of the work starts in acknowledging those parts of yourself that you don't want to own. And I don't knock anybody for not wanting to own it, because it is difficult to own those parts of you, but you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to do it alone. So how do you think healing helps people in their love life achieve that fulfillment that they seek for a deeply fulfilling relationship with themselves before they actually seek it out with someone else?
The word heal comes from the word halo. And the word halo means to make whole. So when we go back to, I think the movie was Jerry Maguire, when Tom Cruise says that amazing line, right? That even melts me today. You complete me. I love that line. But part of me says, even though I love that line because I'm a true, full-blooded romantic, right? I also recognize that there's a little bit of danger in that line, because there's this idea of, I need you to be whole. And that's not necessarily 100% true. From a deeply spiritual place, we could really go deep and down the rabbit hole if you're interested, which is cool. But the truth is, as a human being, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually, just based to this physical body, right? We really need to make ourselves as whole as possible. When we're as whole as possible, we have a lot that we can bring to the table. We're not as needy. It doesn't mean that we're not going to need to be loved or hugged or held or get some affection and attention from our partner. That's all wonderful and great. But we don't need that for us to feel good about ourselves. We can go about our day feeling good about ourselves, whether we see our partner or not, whether we hear from them or not. And so when we're in that state, we show up to a relationship in a place where we have enough to give. And that's when the relationship is healthy, when we both show up with the intention to give, and subtly, or maybe not so subtly, that we're open and receptive to receiving the gifts that somebody wants to give us, the love that they want to give us. And this is really important, because that's where the wholeness happens, right? The giving, if we look at things from from an intimate, sensual, or sexual intimacy way, right? Giving acts a bit like the penis, where the penis is reaching out and trying to extend out. Love is this idea of reaching out and giving, right? But then without a receptive vessel, like the vagina, then that penis or that love or that giving doesn't meet its receiver. It doesn't meet its mate the way that it should. And so we want to find within ourselves the ability to really heal ourselves, let go of the things that beat us up in the past, or let go of how we beat ourselves up, identify the beauty that we have, identify what it is that we want to give, and what we do for the world, and what we do for people that aren't our lover, and what we do for our lover, and what we want to do even if we don't have one. When we get in this place where we're whole, then we have so much that we can give. We can love, we can nurture, we can protect, we can provide, we can laugh with, we can joke with, and then we're not looking for somebody to make us whole. We're not looking for somebody to complete us. We're looking for somebody to pour into. And when we pour into somebody, The law of reciprocity says they receive, and then by default, they want to pour into you. They want to give back to you. So it's this idea of giving and receiving, giving and receiving. It's just breath. It's just intimacy. It's an intercourse, right? It's a sensual, not necessarily sexual, but a sensual intercourse. And the senses in this particular case are often the senses of the heart, the feeling of the heart, the feeling, that bliss of giving and having enough that I can give. And also being comfortable enough with myself that I don't feel like, oh no, don't give it to me. I don't feel good enough. I'm not good enough to receive. Oh, don't do that, because you're cutting them off. They're not able to give and they want to give. And when you receive gracefully, people feel so good about being able to give to you. And they're so grateful that they were able to give. And so the ability to be graceful and receive is an absolute art form that I was not good at from 7th and 8th grade on until about a year ago. My mom would say, just learn to say thank you. And I'm like, oh, I know, but I don't want people to give to me because I don't feel like I don't want them to have to give something up. And at one point I had a client come to me who also was a friend, and then client, and then friend again. And he said to me, he said, you never let me help you. And he's all the way in Florida and I'm here in Tucson, Arizona. And he said, you never let me help you. And I said, well, I don't really feel like I need that much help. And I'm doing pretty good on my own. And he said, but I want to help. And I know that you don't need me. But if there's something that I can do, that I can share, that I can give to you in some way, I want to give. I want to be able to give back for what I feel like you've given to me. And he said, you need to learn to receive. And I said, I know, my mom has been telling me that since 8th grade, and I'm the worst. And so I've constantly and consciously and intentionally practiced just saying thank you and opening up my whole being and receiving whatever kindness or love or gift or payment, from a business standpoint, that people want to give to me. That guy chased me down to pay me to work with me, right? And I just talked to one of my own clients last night, and he said the same thing. He's like, yeah, this guy really was asking me how much I would charge, and I just, I told him what I would charge, and then I changed the subject, and I was like, dude, this guy's trying to put money in your pocket, and you're not receiving. It's the same in a romantic relationship. Somebody's trying to give love to you, and you're not receiving. Sometimes that's because of your old wounds. Sometimes that's because you don't feel good enough. Sometimes that's because you don't trust. And if you don't trust, then you're like, no, I don't trust you, so don't give anything to me. Yet, if they don't give anything to you, you're not going to trust them even more. So it's a spiral downward. We can spiral upwards. Law of reciprocity, you pour into me, I receive, I pour into you, you receive, then you pour into me. We just go up and up and up. Or we can spiral downwards, where I try to give, you say, no, I don't deserve it. I try to give differently, you say I'm not good enough. And pretty soon I'm not giving, and then you're angry that I'm not participating in the relationship. It just spirals downwards.
And I'd like to also point out, to add to what you're saying, it's also the law of flow. If you're not able to receive, you're the kink in the hose, so to speak, and you're stopping the flow because you're not letting it flow by not receiving to give to the next thing.
And it's like a stagnant pond, right? It's a pond that breeds bacteria if it doesn't have running water flowing through it.
Right. And that's how I view it in my mind's eye, is I'm receiving something, thank you, and I fully receive it. And it's able to fund whatever it is that I'm trying to accelerate or give momentum to. And it funds other things that I'm giving to. So as much as, it's wonderful to be the one to give, it's the same energy to be the one to also to receive. Yeah. So, and I'm not putting anyone down who's like a total overgiver, which, is wonderful in your own right. But if you are one who's watching and you are the one that has a difficult time to receive, just remember the law of flow. The law of flow doesn't work without you being able to receive. And also what I like to point out, because, the relevance to what we're talking about, which is the topic of actually, healing your wounds and using your vulnerability as strength to create deeply fulfilling relationships, it's a practice. So, we're going back and forth and having this conversation about, what it takes to heal and what it takes to be vulnerable. And there's many beliefs that we're, you know, spilling out here and, you know, golden nuggets, but I think the biggest one is practice.
Yes.
You know, you don't, this stuff doesn't take overnight. This stuff doesn't just happen. This stuff didn't just happen to PJ. It wasn't just like, boom, you got it now. You're the love guru. I mean, he earned that. He lived that, and he breathes that. And it really starts with practicing. So if you are kind of like lost and you're just like, I don't know, and you're really in your heart right now, I understand. And your heart is a very powerful, you know, tool. It's also a form of energy, but also it's about being aligned with everything, with your emotions, your feelings, your heart, your spirit. And that takes practice.
Yeah. So if we look at nature and we look at science, right now as we understand it, quantum particles are the only thing that form immediately, instantaneously, and out of what seemingly seems like nothingness. But they're not born out of nothingness. They're born out of the pure potential energy that is the universe, that is the divine, right? And they're not born out of it. They're born into it, because everything is surrounded by, enveloped by, and infused with this pure potential, this pure energy. And so everything else takes time to grow. Look at a beautiful flower. We might wake up in the morning and then the flower is there, but it still took time overnight to grow. Even the flower that blossoms has to take time to open, right? The bamboo that grows 200 feet tall takes time to get there. And some Chinese bamboo, you plant it and 5 years later is when it finally starts to grow. And the other thing is, if we look at the Grand Canyon, again, something absolutely stellar and beautiful didn't happen overnight. It was a little bit by a little bit by a little bit by a little bit. Wind erosion, animal trails, water trails, you know, little bit by little bit by little bit by little bit. And the whole of our universe didn't happen overnight. And although you can feel love instantly and immediately, and unbeknownst to you initially, where you just turn a corner and boom, you just like miraculously get overwhelmed by the sense of love, that can happen. But the only way that can happen is in that instance, what probably happened is you relaxed enough, and in that one moment, your mind, your primal brain, your subconscious brain, and your conscious brain, your neocortex, probably all aligned, just exactly like you said a minute ago, Paola, right? That alignment, they probably aligned immediately in that one instant, and everything was quiet. Your primal brain didn't feel any fear or danger, so it didn't need to take control. Your subconscious mind, for whatever reason, settled down and became still for a moment, and your conscious brain was just drinking in and observing, and it was still also. You know, Albert Einstein says this. He says, nothing changes until something moves. And I say, yeah, that's absolutely 100% right. Nothing changes in your life until something moves, right? So the movement inside of your own heart, the movement inside of your brain, what you're thinking about and how you're changing your thinking, none of that happens until you move from this stasis or this static state, right? And we change, we move, even if we just go boom, right? Just that little movement of my nose. If I'm firing an arrow or a gun at 100 yards, that is going to be way off course or on a completely different course. But this is the point. Einstein said nothing changes until something moves, which is absolutely beautiful in the physical world. But from the spiritual world, I like to say this. Nothing changes until you become still, deeply, profoundly still. And when you still your mind, and you still the chaos of your heart, and you still the worry and the doubt, the only thing that is left is the natural blossoming of your love, that level of gratitude and appreciation, that sense of awe and mystery. And that's when everything changes for you. When you become still, when you still the chaos of the I'm not good enough, the I don't feel like I have any value, no one appreciates me, all this bad stuff happened to me in the past, and bad stuff happens to a lot of people. And it's just a matter of how we want to receive that now. If it's not currently happening to you, how do we let go of what happened to you so you can live in this moment and drink in the beauty of this moment, and let your mind go still from the past and become more and more profoundly open to the present and the future. That's when you're beautiful. That's when you're pure. So be still.
That's beautiful. So rich. Thank you so much, PJ, for saying that. I think that's such a gift. That's such a gift for everybody listening to that and being still.
A lot of people that are listening are probably meditators, or have touched on meditation, or played with meditation, or tried meditation, right? And so many people are like, oh, but I can't get my mind to settle down. And there's a lot of people out there that are saying, you don't have to get your mind to settle down. Just give it a little bit of attention and let it be attentive to what it's thinking about and what's going on with that. And there's a million different kinds of meditation. There's a billion different kinds of meditation. There's a meditation or multiple meditations for every single person on the planet, because everybody can create their own meditation. What works for you to come to that place of stillness, to come to that place of release? Do you color? Do you jog? Do you do yoga? Do you paint? Do you cry? Do you journal? Do you laugh with friends, right? Do you eat fruit by yourself, completely quiet, really slow, and look at the colors and the shapes and smell it, and everything just becomes softer? What is it that you do? What's your prayer? What's your meditation? How do you find stillness? And if you're like, I don't know how to find stillness, that's my problem. I'm so always in so much chaos, and I feel like I've got so much to do and so many obligations, and nobody appreciates what I do, and I feel like I'm underappreciated and undervalued, and I don't feel like I have any worth, and nobody cares about me in this world, and it's just terrible. Oh my goodness, let's stop and change that, right? Move your mind from this rut that you're in, where everything is falling apart, to this rut where maybe there's some possibility and opportunity and some beauty in these things. There's this concept called collateral beauty, right? It was a phenomenal movie with Will Smith in it. Collateral beauty is this concept where even though you're in a war zone, internally or externally, there is some beauty. Find it, right? And the word agony, if we look at the original root of the word agon, it means to be at war with. When we're in agony, we're at war with ourselves. Part of us wants to be at peace and filled with love and generosity and gratitude and kindness. And the other part doesn't think that we're worthy and doesn't think that we're good enough, and is looking at how we can do more and what more do we have to do and what are people saying about us and how are they judging us. Wow. It's a horrible place for anybody to live. And I'm not perfect, but I certainly don't live in that space very much anymore. And you don't have to either.
Exactly. And speaking of not living in that place, I want to share with everybody that's watched all the way to the end, because we do have a special gift for you. Yes. And could you please share with everyone what that special gift is?
Absolutely. Look, everybody out there, men or women, children or adults, I don't care who you are, grandmother or single for your whole life, it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that so many times on these summits and podcasts, people give away my free meditations or my ebook or my whatever it is. They always give something away, and it's often really nice, right? But the thing is that what you need more than anything is somebody to talk to, somebody to bounce your ideas off of, somebody to be able to hear you and connect with you and love you and tell you that you matter and that you're valuable. And so what I like to do is I like to say, call me. Sign up for a one-on-one, 30-minute, completely free, complimentary, discovering true love conversation with me. Just sign up, and there will be a link in this podcast or in the email that you got, and I'll even give you the address right now. But just sign up for a one-on-one with me. Get on a call with me for a half an hour. Let's talk. Let's find out what your obstacle is, and let's remove it from your life. Let's get rid of it so that you can open up and move forward. It's an absolutely beautiful process, and it's different for every single person. And all you have to do is go to Calendly, so like calendar, but Calendly.
There will be a link. There will be a link right below this video.
Perfect. Okay, yeah. So then I won't even take the time.
Okay. And at the end of the video, we're going to put it up. So.
Oh, beautiful. Perfect.
They can pause it, and that way they know how to spell it.
Perfect. So come and talk to me, because I literally am all about love, and I'm not any good if I don't have somebody to love. I mean, I am, because I can love myself, right? I can be connected to the divine, and I am connected to the divine as much as you are. But gosh, life is so much richer when we can share it with somebody. And friends are there, and teachers and mentors are there to help you carry half the pain and double your pleasure. So let me do that with you and for you. Let me be your partner.
Thank you so much, PJ.
Thank you. I love you so much.